Hello and welcome to The Spirit Within. I'm Swithin Fry, and this is the second of our Words of Comfort series. The first came all the way from New York, and we are now going back over the Atlantic, way past Europe to England. And in England, I am delighted, totally delighted, to introduce my big sis, Veronica Downey. Ronnie, welcome. Thank you so much for offering to come on to Words of Comfort.
Thank you so much for asking me. I'm sure we've all been through tough times and we have all needed words of comfort.
Indeed. Yeah, and of course, many people, much more than others.
Yes.
But Ronnie, may I ask the delicate question of your age?
Not delicate, I'm proud. I'm 80 this year. Not quite there yet, but very nearly to make it.
So yeah, I should think so. And then tell people, please, whereabouts in England that you are.
Yes, we live in the county of Dorset, in a small market town, not quite market town, called Beminster. And the reason I decided to move here is because my daughters all said to me, Mum, it's a small town, it's got all the facilities, but it feels like a village. And that's why I chose to come.
And have you found that that's true?
I have found it's true, and especially in this virus thing, where volunteers are so kind. We don't ever have to go out and be in danger at all.
Yes.
And everything happens.
Yes. And then what about your experience during the pandemic, Ronnie? Have you had any friends who have gone down with it or worse?
No, and I've got a feeling it's something to do with the fact that it is a rural area. We're not people don't mix a lot. We actually have not come across any specific example at all.
A big crowd.
You see, I've got a feeling that there are people quite a lot in, for example, Bournemouth and Poole, big town centres on the sea. So there'll be visitors, but nothing here at all.
Brilliant. Yeah, that is good. That is good.
Yes.
And now, well, I tell you what, first of all, before we go on to your spiritual path, what about very briefly telling us about your, geographical path? Because your past is fairly interesting. I seem to remember, you know.
Well, the interesting part, of course, is the contrast. Because as you know, we grew up in Hampshire, which is busy, but a nice community. But when I was a teenager, I got inspired by the excitement. I read history at Bristol, and one of our courses was the development of Commonwealth and Empire. And in 1960, which is when it was happening, all of the East African countries were becoming independent from the colonial rule. And at the same time, we were getting publicity asking for volunteer teachers to go out and teach and start to bring the economies together and the education systems together. So I applied, and I think what is of interest is that of 100 people that went, 100 young people who went, all funded by their own governments, by Britain or America. It was a joint group, half and half, both of them. But I found the interesting thing that from the British ones, which I think there were probably about 15 total, it might have been 30 altogether, but about 15 of us, 8 were from Bristol. So in fact, they were very inspired then, weren't they, by what they'd learned about Commonwealth and Empire. Empire, and doing something to get over it.
Indeed.
And so I lived, first of all, I did my dip ed in Makerere in Kampala, the capital of Uganda. And then on our teaching practice term, we were sent to all over the place. And that was when I that's why I went to Kenya and met other people from there. And then when the formal teaching projects came, it was in northern Tanzania, in Machame near Moshi. And then I met my late husband there. and I'm afraid I ditched my teaching contract.
Oh, right. I didn't know that. I didn't know
Oh,
that.
didn't you know that? No, I never finished. I never finished the 2 full years in Moshi, but married Charles and moved to Kenya to be with him.
Right.
So I've lived in all the countries of East Africa. The other thing which I think is relevant to us as a family is the Spanish link, because although I've never lived in Spain as you have, we've always had very strong emotional feelings of how lovely Spain is because of our mum and dad retiring there.
Yes.
And us
Spain
visiting
is
often.
lovely. Spain is lovely.
It's lovely, and
Yeah.
I know 2 of my daughters learned to swim there in the pool by them.
Yes. Yes.
Helen and Claire both did. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
How long were you in Africa for?
In the end, I went out in 1960 or 62 round then, and came back in 87, and that was because we were getting really a lot of violence happening. And I was afraid for the health of my late husband.
Yes.
He'd had a mild stroke,
Right.
and another one later. But it was. I mean, shall I give you an example from
Yes.
showing why one needs to work
Please.
spiritually? One night, we lived about half a mile from the factory, and it had been payday, so all of the finance, all the workers' pay was down at the factory in the office, in Charles's office. And that night we heard gunshots going, and Charles said, "You've got to stay here." The girls were with me then. It must have been in the holidays. And they went. I took them at home until they were 8, but after that they had to go away to be able to mix socially. And that night, our engineer for the company, with 4 different tea estates, 4 different estates, a huge acreage, it was actually an English chap. Usually it was often a Sikh gentleman. I don't think we had an African engineer qualified enough, but we did have several Indian friends. But that night, when Mike, the engineer, and Charles went down to the factory, they got down there. The guns were going off because they were trying to get at obviously at the safe or the cupboard, wherever it was. And because Charles had done national service, when he got down there, he crawled out. He got down onto the floor to get out, so the bullets would be above. But Mike was younger, the engineer, and he was shot and died. And Charles had a stroke and never got over it, really, to be honest. And it was because those security things were beginning to happen that I said to him, "I think it's time we went." You know, Helen was my eldest daughter was getting to the stage of leaving school and hating being on her own in England. And, you know, Mary was getting ready to go away to school herself, to secondary and all that. And, you know, it was a time of a lot of mixed emotional and violent things. And I thought, no, I think we must go now. And that's when we came back in 87.
Yeah.
And we came to Dorset because Mum and Dad had come from Dorset. Dad was born in Dorset. We decided, Charles said, "Where are we going to go?" I said, "I don't know where to go, but let's start looking in Dorset." That's how it happened.
Right. It is a lovely county, isn't it?
Sorry, it's a lovely county. And please forgive me if the story is getting too long and complicated.
No, not at all. Not at all. Not at all. So next then, Ronnie, what about your spiritual path?
Yes, quite complicated, because we were brought up as Catholics, as you know. We were brought up as, you know, in our family. Mum and Dad were quite devoted. But what I found and it was fine, there was no problem about it. But I found that when I got to East Africa, you mixed with so many people with so many different backgrounds, and all of them were lovely, all of them were kind, all of them were interesting, all of them had sorts of stories to tell. And I couldn't get narrow-minded, and so I started we were invited, because we got on so well with all of the different tradespeople that we were dealing with, because there were very few Europeans in our area, 2 or 3 only. And because of the fact that we could not have existed without our Hindu shop suppliers, our Sikh car, motor type things, servicing tractors and that sort of thing. We were invited. I've been to a Muslim wedding, and I've been to a Sikh wedding, and I've been to a Sikh naming of a child. And I have been to seek 24-hour prayer service, which the people who invited us, that was one of our engineers actually, he and his wife, had wanted a family, they'd wanted a baby and had not been able to conceive one. And they had a 24-hour prayer begging the Lord to send them a baby. Whether one ever came or not, I'm not sure. But I do remember joining in. So that Muslim wedding was fun as well, huge. We've been to a lot of things. So when we came back to England, when I taught, I did a lot of interfaith work. And at the moment, funnily enough, right through life, although I still attend Catholic Mass on Sundays and keep in touch socially with all of our local parish, very much so, I'm actually at this not at this moment, but when things are normal, I'm going to a U3A group on comparative religion.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Wow.
So to me, really, everything is all about looking for the good in life and trying hard to avoid the bad.
Yeah.
As simple as that.
Yeah. Well, that sounds to me like a good what's a good lead on to your words of comfort.
Well, what I found is I've got so many things, and the real comfort, I've definitely come to the conclusion, is following on with this finding your hidden treasure. And that is the real comfort, I think, is learning to really, truly meditate. So start off even with a phrase from, say, Genesis or some, in the beginning, God made the world, something like that. It could be as simple as that. And then slowly the silence will take over and you get to your inner self. And it's very restful and it's lovely. But because that is more a spiritual, emotional experience rather than something I can read out to you, I've picked up the book, All in the End is Harvest. And the reason I found it so comforting is that a very good friend of ours, who actually has a link with Africa as well, she lives in the village just up the road, Chiddock, Rosemary Daniels, and every single parishioner who was left widowed, man or woman, she herself did, through good books, sent a copy of All in the End is Harvest, because it's about an anthology for those who grieve. And now you've heard of the one or two violent things that I've lived through, you can see why I found it good. Now, and this is the one, it's very, very brief, I hope that's all right.
Oh no, yes, we have plenty of time, Ron. We have plenty of time.
And what we can do then is we can move on for it if you like. But this is, for example, this book is full of, it's got everything in. For example, you can do something like lead kindly light amid the encircling gloom, lead thou me on. But the one that I love, because I love everything to do with nature, as you know, in my garden is not very well organised. I do sit in it though and read rather than do the gut weeding. But I love this one. Now I don't even know where it comes from. I'm just trying to think. Second Tangi responses. I'm trying to work out which language it's in, but it looks to me a bit as though it might be from New Zealand. But look, Ki ta moana atatu atua. A flower has fallen into the water. Imagine it as you go. A flower has fallen into the water. Its petals spread wide to show the beauty to the world. It is caught by the falling tide. It's carried to the ocean of our God. Farewell to the place of peace. Be with us in your peace, our lover. And so, do you see why I found it emotional? You can start off by feeling sad that you've lost something beautiful, but you end up by being comforted by yes. Silence.
Yes.
And that's it, really.
Yes. Ronnie, say a little bit more about meditation, because I suspect there are many people who know what you mean, but I suspect there are many people who don't know what you mean.
Well, what I think, the first thing is, St. Augustine of Hippo wrote the sentence, I don't even know what book it was in, but he wrote, God speaks to us in the great silence of the heart. So in other words, if you can keep quiet and just listen peacefully, you will hear goodness and love and life. And because of the fact that I'm sitting with Harry in the sitting room here, and Harry doesn't believe in God, just like Augustine says, God is within us. God speaks to us in the silence of our heart. If you can manage silence, Harry is a fanatical music expert. And I have definitely seen a book written on God speaks to us in music. If there were no music, there wouldn't be a God. I thought, I'll tell you some. I'll tell you some.
I like it. I like it. I like it. Yeah, fabulous,
Sure.
fabulous, Ronnie.
No,
That's just one last one, and then we'll close the interview.
Sitting there, all peaceful and quiet. Some time ago, an elderly lady complained to me she couldn't pray anymore. Father, she said, I can't pray like I used to. I come here to church after my shopping. I sit here, my mind goes blank. I sit here peaceful and quiet, but I can't pray. I tried to suggest that perhaps sitting there, peaceful and quiet, was prayer. Maybe it was a gift God was offering her at this stage in her life. She herself wasn't convinced, but I am. What my parishioner was discovering was one of God's loveliest gifts, purest form of prayer, because it was silence. It was nothing. It was silence. No words, silence. He rejected it. It wasn't what she'd been taught. Many of us will remember being taught that prayer is a lifting up of our minds and hearts to God. This can be a burden. We have to work at lifting up. But there are times when we cannot find the words, or when the well-known prayers, which usually inspire and comfort us, strike no chord in our hearts. Our hearts become heavier. Our feelings don't match words. We're tired of words anyway. Tired of asking God in words that have no life in them. Then it is best to simplify, follow the age-old advice, go from many words to few words, from few words to one word, and from one word into silence. Deepest communion with God comes through silence. And that's what I really meant by it. I think if you sit, there's a Catholic paper called The Universe, and before this virus thing came, I don't bother to buy it myself, but there are a couple of parishioners in Bridport who, when they finish with it, hand it on to me and see that I get it. And in there's a column every week by the chap who's emphasised the fact that he's dyslexic, which my grandson Joe is, so difficult to read and write. But he's found contemplation is the absolute answer, because all you do is just sit in silence and lift your mind and heart to something beautiful, like the flower in the water or the trees rustling around you. And slowly the silence will take you over, and that's all you need. What this guy said in the Universe column was that it's a very big 16th century Spain contemplative movement, but I forget the names now. Sorry.
Right. Okay, Ronnie, thank you so much.
No, thank you, Tiff. That's fine. That's fine. Yeah. We've managed it, haven't we? We've managed it. Life is changing, isn't it?
Yes, indeed. So thank you very, very much to Veronica Downey from Bridport in Dorset, England. And all of our Words of Comfort interviews can be seen on the website, which is www.s-within.com. And on the website, there is a tab that says Library, and then into the library on YouTube interviews. One last. Oh, sorry. Go on, Ronnie.
No, I was thinking with this virus thing, it's the perfect thing to be doing.
Well, let's hope so.
Isn't it?
Let's hope
so. Perfect.
Just one last thing. Talking of libraries, I have a memory, because you're 9 years older than me. I have a memory of going into the public library at Bristol by the main library down by the council house.
Yes, it is.
I was going in with some mates just to sort of play around a bit, waste a bit of time before the bus. And you were studying You were studying up there.
I forgot. I didn't know. I forgot.
Thank you very, very much, Ronnie. Thank you very, very much.
And all the very best for your lovely project. It's a good idea.
Thank you.
God bless. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.